The oral tradition across time and cultures. Scholars generally refer to the oral tradition as a cultural practice of passing down information, stories, beliefs, and cultural practices from one generation to the next through spoken words, rather than through written text. This practice has been important in many cultures throughout history, particularly before the widespread use of written language. The oral tradition can encompass a wide range of practices, including storytelling, singing, chanting, recitation of poetry or epics, and even formal speeches. It involves a close relationship between the speaker and their audience, with the speaker tailoring their message to their listeners and incorporating feedback and questions. In many cases, the oral tradition has been used to preserve cultural heritage, including the history, mythology, and traditions of a particular community. It also has been used as a means of social and political control, with those in power using oral communication to convey their message and reinforce their authority. Today, the oral tradition continues to be an important part of many cultures, although it has been supplemented and in some cases replaced by written text and other forms of communication. Scholars continue to study the oral tradition as a means of understanding the history and culture of various communities and as a way of exploring the ways in which communication practices have evolved over time. In the next few slides, we will look at paintings of storytellers. Please consider the following questions for each slide. In what setting does this scene take place? Who is the speaker's audience? How are the other individuals positioned in relation to the speaker? The speaker is pointing to the sky. What kind of story might this indicate he is telling? In what setting does this scene take place? Who is the speaker's audience? How are these individuals positioned in relation to him? What does his gesture and the audience's expression indicate about the story he is telling? In what setting does this scene take place? Where are the listeners in relation to the speaker? What does the instrument in the speaker's hand indicate about the story he is telling? What purpose do you think this story serves? In what setting does this scene take place? Who is the speaker's audience? What type of story might he be telling? What do the audience's expressions tell us about the story he is telling? works have been derived from the oral tradition, as the oral tradition has been an important means of transmitting stories, legends, myths, and historical events before the development of writing. Here are some examples of written works that originated from the oral tradition. The Epic of Gilgamesh. This ancient Sumerian poem, considered to be one of the earliest works of literature, was originally transmitted orally before it was written down on clay tablets. The Iliad and the Odyssey. These two epic poems by the ancient Greek poet Homer were passed down orally for generations before they were eventually written down. Beowulf. This Anglo-Saxon poem, which tells the story of the hero Beowulf and his battles against monsters and dragons, was likely passed down through oral tradition before it was written down in Old English. The Ramayana and the Mahabharata, these two epic poems from India, were originally transmitted orally in Sanskrit before they were written down. The Grimm's Fairy Tales. These popular folk tales from Europe were collected by the Brothers Grimm in the 19th century, but many of the stories had been passed down through oral tradition for centuries. Overall, many written works have originated from the oral tradition, and this tradition continues to be an important part of many cultures around the world today. On the left is a Greek manuscript of the Odyssey. On the right is a modern translation of the Odyssey, printed as a book. On the left is an Old English manuscript of Beowulf. On the right is a modern translation of Beowulf, printed as a book. On the left is a painting of Sky Woman Falling. On the right is Braiding Sweetgrass by Robin Wall Kimmerer, in which Sky Woman Falling is recorded. Personal and communal oral stories are important in shaping our individual and collective identities, as they allow us to connect with our past, understand our present, and imagine our future. Here are some ways in which personal and communal oral stories shape who we are. Transmission of cultural knowledge. Personal and communal oral stories carry the history, values, and traditions of a culture, and they are passed down from one generation to the next. By listening to these stories, individuals learn about their cultural heritage and develop a sense of belonging to their community. Building social bonds. Oral stories are often shared in communal settings, such as family gatherings, religious ceremonies, and community events. By participating in these storytelling activities, individuals develop social connections with others and form a sense of collective identity. Developing individual identity. Personal oral stories, such as family histories, can help individuals understand their place in the world and their relationship to their family and community. These stories can shape an individual's self-concept and provide a sense of continuity across time. Encouraging empathy and understanding. Communal oral stories can also promote empathy and understanding among individuals from different backgrounds. By sharing stories of hardship, triumph, and resilience, people can develop a greater appreciation for one another's experiences and perspectives. In conclusion, Personal and communal oral stories play a significant role in shaping who we are by transmitting cultural knowledge, building social bonds, developing individual identity, and encouraging empathy and understanding. By listening to and sharing these stories, individuals can connect with their past, understand their present, and imagine their future. Listed are modern examples of the oral tradition. The Presidential State of the Union Address, audiobooks, radio, music, advertisements, and talk shows, podcasts, TED Talks. Review. In this presentation, we have considered what scholars mean by the oral tradition, what written works have come to us from the oral tradition, and how personal and communal oral stories shape who we are. We have examined paintings that depict storytellers in action, as well as how those stories are received by their audience, and we've identified contemporary means through which the oral tradition lives on. There are some final questions, though, that I'd like you to consider. What oral stories are important to you? How do they inform your identity? And in what ways do you relate these stories to others in order to ensure they live on?